We're late
I know.
because we're on a meeting, and I got all excited about something we were doing in the lead gen company. And there's Florian. And
Hi.
Florian, I think you got an echo in the background. I'm going to turn you off here. All right, there we go. So, what was our topic today, Gail?
Oh,
It's
I
always
don't
power of
know.
the group, but I'm going to pull it up while we're chatting here because I want to stay on topic and not drift around. But basically, what we're typically talking about is the power of the group, meaning in different kinds of businesses, what we're focusing on depends on what our goal is, what our company is. And here it is, the power of being an expert, how to sell companies with money. That's what we're focusing on. So let's talk about the power of being an expert first. So, Gail, tell me a little bit about. Okay, Brian's joining. Everyone's crashing in at the last minute because we were on the campus having an exciting discussion in the More Money Now group, and then somebody said, I think it was, aren't we supposed to be doing this other thing? So now we're all here.
Yay.
We're all here.
Thank
So
you
the
for my
power of
phone
being
for
an
digging.
expert, how to sell companies with money.
Mhm.
How do we do it?
So your first question was, what does it mean to be an expert?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's start there.
So it's interesting. I used the term master, and for a while I called myself an empowerment master. And mastery to me does not mean I've got there, I got it, I got my shit, like right? It for me it was the moment that I realized that I had impact on people with what I knew, and the impact grew because I was open to growing more and more.
Hmm.
Right? And so it's my ability to honor how great I was at what I did, as well as being humble enough to know I ain't got it all.
Yep. Yep.
I love that. Um,
Brian, what's your perspective on it?
yeah, I just want to share the idea that freedom can never be given, only claimed. And I think mastery is the same way. So I waited for a long time for somebody like abracadabra, you're a master. Well, I'm still waiting for that moment. What I'm finding is like 10% of learning is reading, 30% is taking a video course. And for me, mastery means I'm teaching. There's things that I will only learn from my clients. So giving myself permission to be on the path of mastery from facilitating what I'm learning and being taught. You are my teacher and I am yours. That's my definition of a master, someone who can learn from their clients and share things to think about.
The Nobel Prize winning physicist, Niels Bohr, gave me the definition that I've been using for a while. And what he said, I don't know if I have the quote exactly right, but you get the idea, is that an expert is someone who's failed in virtually, not virtually, but actually everything in a specific domain of human activity. And in his case, it was physics, but not all physics. It was, and I'm not a physicist, but he had a specific area of interest. So he started as a generalist, where he went into everything because he was interested in everything, and he got more and more specific. Ray Dalio talks about it too. So Ray Dalio created the largest hedge fund in the world, and then wrote a book called Principles. So don't think of him as just a financial person. Chairman of the Feds, people who run the economies consult with Ray Dalio. Maybe they shouldn't, but it's because he actually knows how the economy works because he spent his whole life in it.
Mhm.
So this is the difference between being an executive or a leader of something and being in it and struggling and stumbling around. And then what happened to me was all of a sudden I started realizing, oh, it's another one of those. Oh, it's another one of those. And I wasn't confused anymore. And that's when I felt like an expert, but I know a lot about lots of stuff. But what am I an expert in? I'm an expert in business development of the hard type, where you bootstrap it and you got to get out and hustle it. I'm not an expert in setting up a sales organization. I'm an expert in being a business developer and setting up a business development group. Done that. Well, I'm not an expert in finishing the sales organization. I started one.
Mhm.
So I did that. So I'm an expert in the things I've done. And you don't become an expert until you've failed enough where you're like, I got there. Like,
I
oh, finally.
Yeah, I have to tell you, Larry, so what's really interesting is you defined me as corporate woo the other day,
Yes.
right? Because I straddle these two worlds where I am an expert at corporate leadership and how to do that in flow. Why? Because I did it. Why? Because I failed, right?
And
And
succeeded a lot too, though.
well, because I had permission to fail in the organizations I was in.
Mhm.
My first major failure, my boss looked at me, goes, "Well, that didn't work. What's next?"
Yeah.
Bam! All of the freedom in the world was handed to me on a golden platter that day, right?
Mhm.
And I took off and I was not afraid to try anything. And anything that failed didn't even register. I just went to the next thing and just went to the next thing, right? And the woo, and I just and then I'll let you speak the woo very quickly. I was incredibly woo, incredible. I could heal people at the age of 23,
Yeah.
and I got afraid and stopped. And the
Yep.
struggles I had to go through to get back there have been incredible. It was a struggle coming back.
That's a common theme that I see with myself included. Feel like Jonah and the whale some days.
Mhm.
I went down the special options pipeline.
Can you explain
About
Jonah and the whale, quick? Because that's a good analogy, I think, to what it's like.
it is so. There's a story in the Bible of Jonah and the whale, and they're in the middle of a thunderstorm, which is what I'm in right now. But they're at sea, and they're going to lose the boat. And Jonah's sleeping in the belly of the boat, and like we got to abandon ship. Jonah's like, no, I know what the problem is. I've been running from my gift. I'll just get out. So Jonah jumps out of the boat. The storm stops immediately. He gets gobbled up by a whale, and the whale delivers him exactly to where he's meant to serve as medicine. I've gone through that. There's a guy, Paul, 2008, he lost everything. 2007, he was a rich man in Southern California. That year, he declared bankruptcy. 18 months ago, his house burned down to the ground, and we did a session together. And he's like, I just need 5 minutes. We're 30 minutes into this energetic session. He's like, I know what to do. I have to serve the medicine. The gift was taking away everything. He was going to lose his health next, and I start serving the medicine. So all of this destruction led him back to the path of healing and woo, as you said. You know, there's an
So,
interesting idea I want to share really quick too.
yep.
Scott Adams, Dilbert, and I remember an interview from him. He's like, I'm not the best artist. I'm not the funniest comedian either, but I am the funniest cartoonist that does stuff in business.
Yeah,
So he
because you
made
worked in the
himself
engineering
one of one.
departments, and you knew how ridiculous it all was.
Yes. And
That's
so his
right.
cartoon strip was doing really well. And you're like, aren't you going to quit this? Like, you're financially free. He's like, where am I going to get my inspiration from? So
Yeah.
then when he was in these engineering meetings, he'd take out his notebook and start sketching. And everybody was like,
Uh-oh.
uh-oh, this is about to be a cartoon about us.
That's right. That's right. So I want to take this back to the power of being an expert going into how to sell to companies with money. And people who are successful want to work with experts. People who are not successful often are susceptible to marketing. Now, many people who are really successful are also very susceptible to persuasion marketing. And when Robert Cialdini wrote Influence, he wrote it as a very successful person who was very susceptible to marketing persuasion. And he wanted to understand why. And the idea is not marketing persuasion is bad. The idea is actually that it works.
Mhm.
It works. However, making a choice to get companies with money as opposed to attracting a lot of people who want you to give them an answer because they're in pain and they see you now because you did a good job of attracting them to deliver for them is a different kind of business than creating a business based on being an expert and surrounding yourself with other people who want to let you fail with you with that. You fail together, you learn together, you come together. It's a very different strategy.
And it's it's the long game, which a lot of people, I know for me, so I won't say a lot of people, there was a time I was very susceptible to that strategy because I was in pain financially and I didn't know what steps to take. This is when I began as an entrepreneur. And, I tell the story of having 5 coaches. I counted them. I had 5 coaches and built this amazing funnel, used this incredible software, right? And it failed. I got bupkis, 0. And I was devastated. And it was at that point that I called all of the coaches except for my personal trainer and said, I need to figure me out before I can figure my business out.
Mhm.
Bye.
I want to challenge your statement because I'm not sure it's true. At least from what I'm observing, I don't know, but what I am observing for myself and my own experience is playing the marketing game now is takes longer.
Ah,
It's reversing. So I think the reason is that there's so many people who can hire or afford to hire somebody like brand builders that did Lewis House stuff, or Alex Hermosi hired I forget his name now, but he's one of the top YouTube marketers in the world, and he's a genius at marketing. So those, and Russell Brunson talks about this too, and Dan Kennedy, whoever can spend the most on media wins, and they know how to fund their media buy with what's called a break-even funnel, meaning they sell a book that's basically their media spend. There's a guy named Todd Brown who executes on this really well too. This is how Tony Robbins fills up rooms. So you're competing against those people, and you're also
yep,
competing against things like Netflix.
yep,
So I
yep.
think
You're
marketing is
right.
starting to take longer because it's harder now.
Right. At the time, that's not true, but I was still buying into that until about 2020.
Until the
Fantastic
pandemic.
year. Fantastic year because that forced me to sit back with myself and
Mm.
question everything. Right? Go ahead, Brian. I know he's got a billion thoughts coming
I
to
know
his
he's
mind right
really
now.
thinking. I love the idea of 2020. Like Brian, if you go wherever you want, but I'm wondering, like, I had big realizations and changes in 2020. Gail did, and so did almost everybody I met on LinkedIn. Like it was really, we were all going through something in a shift, and now we're way past that shift and into the next thing. Like that's done, and now we're into something totally different. So Brian,
Correct.
whatever you want to say, go for it.
Yeah, my thought is like the seemingly easy thing to do is just follow somebody else's cookbook. Spend a lot of money doing that,
Mhm.
and it feels safe. I just do this, except it didn't work. And if it does work, and it stops working, and I haven't given myself permission to run the experiments and the permission to fail, when the market changes, I have no idea what's next because I have to look much like a dog looks to their trainer to figure out, hey, how do I solve this? Like a wolf doesn't do that. Like a wolf will figure stuff out as a tribe or by themselves, but it knows what's happening in the environment. So there's not an immediate payoff, but it seems like if I keep my ear to the railroad track and I understand the market before I start doing marketing, I can be adaptable to what's next. I don't have to wait for Brunson or Hermosi to tell me what's next. Because by the time they tell me that, they're already on to the next thing.
They are,
Right.
because they have a private mastermind group where Todd Brown's talking about this, where Todd Brown's letting people into his private mastermind group to talk about what's next because he knows what they're doing in the old playbook that is in his old books, E5 and all this, isn't going to work forever. Who's going to get that program? We got to pay more for it.
So the question that begs to be answered, well, so if you don't have a large media spend, you can't do the break even, he who has the most money wins. I think it comes back to the experience sharing economy. Hey,
Well,
I noticed this.
Yeah.
You noticed that. What if we put those ideas together and run an experiment?
I think it depends who you are and what you want to do and what your skill set is. So I'm firmly in a playbook, which is a what's next playbook, but I'm not running the play. So I own, as a lot of people know, a lead generation sales outsourcing company, which is where it started because I'm an expert in that. But we turned it into what I would call a revenue generation company in a niche. And the
Mhm.
niche comes from understanding how to market to a database. In other words, a hyper targeted list for B2B. So B2B meaning a business that sells to other businesses in a very specific way. If you have a high quality pig, you put lipstick on it, you sell it and people see it, but you got to cut through a lot of stuff. And Warren Buffett talks about building a moat around the company. And I look at that company and I'm like, that took years and it took a lot of people. It took me to start it, figure it out, be the business developer in the trenches, get it going, get past 100 grand a month. And then it took having Courtney in there, who's been working in there for years, to manage the operations and integrate all these really complex technologies. In other words, we had to create our own technology platform without being a software development company by cobbling together all kinds of platforms because they were all running old playbooks, separating things. And now Glenn, who's running that company, is using ad tech technology that I was selling back in the 2000s that sort of worked. Now it really works. So it took that long. Good luck doing that today. You can't compete with us. You can do lead gen. You can say you're doing it. You can say you're doing hyper personalization through ChatGPT, but unless you're really good, you're not going to catch up. It's too hard unless you love doing it. And then you'll get.
If that's what you love doing, do that. So I come from the coaching space. Do the coaching or do the marketing stuff. I don't know if there's bandwidth as a solopreneur to do both.
I've never seen anyone do it. The coaches who do it successfully are copywriters. They're professional, like a Justin Welsh, for example. A Justin Welsh, who I found in 2020, and I met with him. I did his audience and income community. I did his course. I tried the playbook. I ran the playbook. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. But I learned so much from Justin about the experience sharing approach because he said to me, he said, let him get to know you before you sell him. And I'm like, well, I've never done that before. I always just go right at people like a steamroller. And he's like, no, don't do that.
So Larry, first of all, I worked with Justin when he was still in college.
You did?
Yes, I did.
When
Yes,
he
I
worked
did.
in medical technology?
Yes, and he was running a group on how to use email campaigns, right? How to
He's a
successfully.
genius.
Yeah. Oh, he's brilliant. He's brilliant.
It's good.
And yes, so I wrote down here as you guys were talking, um, getting back to being a master is for me is the experience of being a 100% authentic online, right? And so I tell my woo-woo stories and you see that they're very anchored in third dimensional reality results. And I'm starting to see I am now authentic. I am now the expert. I am now reliable. And higher level people are reaching out to me daily.
That's called, and let's go back to the topic, everyone. So, how to sell companies with money. That if your client is just a high net worth individual that doesn't have a company, same thing. It's how to sell people with money, how to sell companies with money. This is how to do it. It's a way. Now, Gail could have become a copywriter learning from Justin. That's possible, but that's not what you wanted to
I
do.
did that for a while. Yep.
You did, but that's not what you wanted to do long term.
Yep. 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 It worked, but it wasn't comfortable.
For me neither. And when I dropped the rope, I did a program called from a guy named Gino Wickman, who created a protocol called the Entrepreneur Operating System with a program called Traction. I was in a CEO group and we toured a facility of a guy in Chicago who ran his company through it. And I think they do about 20 million in revenue, and it worked for that company. And they're real solid in a marketplace as a privately owned company competing against US waterproofing, which was very difficult. And they succeeded and they have very high profit margins. And I was like, I'm doing this. We instituted it in Call Sales Partners, which was what it was called at the time. And it didn't work at all. But what did work again was the principle of drop the rope. So in September 20th of 2020, I dropped the rope to Glenn and I said, you want to do this? I can't do it anymore. I'm drowning in my own company. And we could be 20, 30 grand in the hole in like a month. And I don't have the funds to cover that. And my advisor from the CEO group was like, borrow money, or in other words, not borrow money, but find an investor. And I'm like, no, then I lose control. Well, what was my solution? Give up completely, turn it over to Glenn. And we got back to 1.5 million last year. In a highly profitable business, it's passive income. So there's Jonah and the whale right there for me personally.
That's Brian.
What I'm present to currently, you guys have so much more experience in this than I do. Special operations background, medical sales, coaching, and every time I talk to you guys, it's reframing. I just had a big breakthrough. I found myself comparing myself to both of you. I'm like, oh, so the lesson right now is to find comfort. I'm supposed to be here. And like the moment I'm like, what am I doing in this meeting? You're like, and Jonah and the whale. I'm like, oh, that's why I'm here. So
It's more than that.
And I just want to share. So
I'm just
Brian,
sharing
you
my
just
inner process real
Yeah.
time with
I
you
love it.
guys. Yeah.
And this is what happens in the campus.
Yeah.
This is exactly what happens and we learn from each other, believe me, from each other's experience. I did not tell Brian anything. Larry didn't tell Brian anything. Larry didn't tell me anything. He shared his perspective and his experience, and I choose what to do with that information.
Correct. And so I want to talk about Brian here for a minute. So Brian runs what we call the Invincibility Dojo. So the Invincibility Dojo is about how to sell companies with money. Brian never talks about how to sell companies with money because he doesn't need to. I talk about that. But because it's integrated in the product and we are not partners from a financial standpoint, it's my company, but our interests are aligned economically, socially, spiritually. We're doing this together. There is no way I could have built the Entrepreneur Experience Campus or Red Pill Pathway without you guys. There's no way. And I'm talking about not only the product itself and delivery of the product, with both of you being part of the product is part of the daily experience. You still have your own businesses that have nothing to do with me, but are integrated in a weird way. And I couldn't have built it without Gail because I couldn't figure out how to integrate Go High Level and Welo and these modern technologies in a new way because those technologies were not set up to do what we're doing. They have to be integrated. I couldn't do it. Gail did. We're not done. We're getting there though. We're almost
Right.
done.
Right. And that's the corporate coming out. And I have the next generation living, which is just as, it's about getting to the next level so that you expand both third dimensionally, physically, financially, whatever it is that you're looking for, from a whole different perspective in your life. And that integrates completely with what's going on in this business platform.
So as you share that, Gail, I'm an expert in the internal workings of the clock. So what are the judgments? What are the traumas? What's the stuff buried under the house you don't want to look at? Right. I'm a specialist in that. And when it comes to the business systems stuff, I have Larry for that. So I find in the coaching space, people are either like really good at marketing and getting clients, or they're really good at delivering great coaching. And so by having specializations in this fractal ecosystem, I don't have to be an expert in that.
Right.
And so the playbook that really worked for a long time was started by a guy named Steve Hardison. And he kind of invented the coaching industry. In other words, bringing professional coaching to the mainstream. I think that's what he really did. And his wife wrote a book called The Ultimate Coach, and he is. And then he had two, let's call them proteges, Steve Chandler, Rich Litvin. They wrote a book called The Prosperous Coach, which is how to integrate making money and coaching. And I think that model is becoming a problem right now for many people who are newer because so many people don't want free anymore because they know there's a pitch at the end. So people distorted the Prosperous Coach strategy and turned it into a marketing system and a marketing funnel. So a lot of the market today when they see somebody, in other words, what they teach people is share the experience, give people 2 hours of your time, and they will become your customers if they have a great experience, as opposed to explain the experience, because you can't, because you don't know what experience they're going to have. The problem is today, nobody wants the 2 hours free of your coaching anymore because everyone's offering it. So that playbook exploded into the marketplace. It got distorted by the opportunistic marketers. Nothing wrong with that at all. They succeeded. So now the market is saturated and exhausted by free coaching. So that lead generation sales approach is very, very difficult to run unless you have a high net worth or high quality network or already done it.
Yeah, I will not join any free anything. I delete those emails, stop mailing them to me. Right?
Yeah. Well, how
Right.
long has
Some
it
of you
been?
don't
That
have an
book was
opt-out. That's
written.
against the law.
When was that book
Um,
written? It was written before that book was written before the pandemic.
right.
Everything's
This is what
changed.
Justin was teaching me. This is what he was teaching me. We're talking, how old is he now? He was 21.
He's also a genius. So
He's also right.
I did the stuff Justin Welsh did in B2B. He evolved it into the online platform on LinkedIn and X, and said, build your audience and their income will be there. And he factored in all the metrics and created the protocols for it, which is a principle-based system because it works everywhere. And I went to run that playbook, and I'd already been running it in the B2B sales environment pretty well. And then when I went to run it online, it wasn't working for me because I wanted to invent something new. I didn't want to run his playbook.
Right. Right. And that, I think, when we're talking about how whoever it is that you want to attract, you've got to find your own playbook.
Or don't, or copy somebody else, but be aware what you're doing. So you got to get really good at copying, and you got to get in early. So if you're going to copy somebody who's succeeded 8 years later, so if you're going to copy a Russell Brunson, be aware when you have $100 million in revenue for a lot of years, a lot of people bought that program and they're running that play. Now he's evolving the play. So he bought Napoleon Hill stuff, he bought Dan Kennedy stuff, but fundamentally it's still the same playbook. It's just bumped up in quality, but it's still the same playbook.
Right. Right.
Does it
You know,
work?
and there are certain principles and it's like universal laws. There are certain principles, and that's what you brought, Larry, for us. Are here are the basic principles,
Yeah.
basic framework. You put your own meat on the bone.
That's how they did it.
Right.
Russell Brunson didn't copy Russell Brunson's How to Succeed Online playbook. He invented it. So did Alex Hormozy. They invented it. Now they're teaching other people, and it works for a while. It works for a while, but they also teach principles. There's some underneath, but the principle, I think, often is find yourself. But you can also use their approach. Just be aware. So are a lot of other people.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
all right, thanks, guys. I'm going to stand for 10 more minutes, and I think we got the Entrex Forum. We're going
Yep.
to be bringing that Entrex Forum and Red Pill Labs out into the world pretty big time over the next month or so, because we had to get ready. We had to build the pig, right? The pig
Right.
factory
Right. No lipstick.
behind the
It's got to be a
scenes
good
before
pig.
we put lipstick on it. We're not going to put any lipstick on it. So you decide if you want to come or not. I want you to come, but I am not going to do a sales call. Don't want to do that
I
anymore. I've
just, I
already
just
done
want to
it.
mention how valuable your experience is in this experiment. What are you noticing in this? So EntreX, kind of like a TED Talk, except we're all the speaker.
So I'm gonna stay on. I'm gonna do 10 minutes behind the scenes, and I'm gonna talk about what Brian said. I'm gonna answer Entrex Forum and Red Pill Labs and why we're doing it and why I'm excited about it.
Bye, guys.
All right, thanks,
I
Brian.
guess.
So I want to talk about what Brian said. So we didn't plan that. It just happened because we were late, so we didn't plan anything. That's what happens when you work with people long enough. It's cost me $0. $0. Is it a barter? No, we're just doing it together. It's not even a barter. We're all in. Jim Collins wrote a book, Right People on the Bus. I got the right people on the bus. How did I do it? I talked about what I wanted, my own vision. We created a shared desire together. We have different visions that are completely different, but we have a shared desire. We want a better entrepreneur experience. Gail wants to do her thing. Brian wants to do his thing. I want to do my thing. My job is the structure because I'm good at it. I'm an expert at it. I've been doing it my whole life. So let's talk about EntreX Forum and Red Pill Labs. So I was looking at TEDx and I was thinking, how to get a TED Talk is one of the most popular strategies in marketing today. So the How to Get a TED Talk courses are selling like crazy. I know a guy who does it, and his courses are filled. He's making money doing that. How to get a TED Talk, not a TED Talk, TEDx. There's a big difference. So TED is ideas worth sharing. TEDx is ideas worth sharing for marketing purposes today for coaches or people who've written books about topics where they are trying to build a business around their idea. So that's what TEDx turned into. So when I went to TEDx in Naperville years ago, it was more like TED. So it was people who had an idea or a hobby or an experiment they'd run in the lab, and they were talking about it, but they didn't have a coaching program to sell or a book to sell. And it was super cool because it was like TED, but local. Well, that's changed because it's worked for TEDx, expanded their business, and it's also expanded businesses for millions of coaches because they're giving people a platform that doesn't cost anything, but TEDx makes money doing this. It's their mission. It's mission oriented as well. So it's a good social driving mission, TEDx. Now, what I looked at is I said, well, I don't want to do that because it's marketing and I don't want to figure it out anymore. And then I have to follow their formula. So now the formula of how to get a TED Talk leads to how to deliver a TED Talk. So that's called the conventional thought process. In other words, the audience has an expectation of how it's supposed to go. It's like screwing with the show. So if you're a successful musician, Rolling Stones, Keith Richards, and Keith Richards does something really weird and different and cool. I think it's called Expensive Winos or something. I forget his solo thing. Rolling Stones audience doesn't want that. They want Mick up on stage with Keith. So they want to make money, print it, do it. And they did. And they released an album, which the cover looked to me like it was from 30 years ago. And Damon Albarn, who's an original artist, Blur, and Gorillaz, and now solo, was like, he's trashing. He's like, what the hell, man? Like, do something cool. Well, they did, but people don't want it. Rolling Stones audience doesn't want that. It's a mass market audience. They want the greatest hits. All right, that's their decision. It's not mine. Keith and Mick can do whatever they want. That's the point. So I looked at it and I'm like, no, I want to do something different. I don't want to run the TEDx playbook because I don't care. I want to make money because if I had the money in the bank just to do whatever I wanted, I wouldn't even be in business. I'd just be writing books and speaking at TED. I'd come up with an original idea, which I have, but I'd focus 100% of my time on my original ideas and try to get a real TED slot in California. That would be my ambition, and get a book at the Malcolm Gladwell level. That's my ambition. Am I ever going to get there? I got no idea. Do I have original ideas? Yeah, I do. And that's what it's for. So I'm like, all right, how do we do this? So the EntreX Forum is that. So the EntreX Forum is what's going on in the world now, in the entrepreneur world, of all of it. Inner development, communications, content, marketing, mindset coaching, the whatever. But it's what's going on now, not what's coming. That's different. So what's going on now is people focused on society and looking at it and saying, this is what it is. So they're looking at the society and saying, not what's next. They're not thinking about what's next. They're thinking about what's going on and how do we do it? How do we succeed in it? Experience sharing is the key to this meeting to me, because then there's no audience and stage. I don't want a stage. I don't want to be in a room and a stage. I won't do it. I won't go to a networking event or a TEDx and sit in the audience. I just won't go. I'm not interested. I already have all that information. What I want to know is your experience. I don't want to know what your philosophy is on brand marketing. I don't care. Or anything, frankly. I call those belief systems. It's great. A lot of people want that. I don't. And I don't want to do more of that because everyone's doing it. Why would I want to do that? TEDx already exists. So the EntreX Forum is not your beliefs about meditation, marketing, or whatever got you your epiphany bridge life. It's the experience itself in a room in a circle. And I know this from my personal development work because I'm also an expert in personal and inner development because I was an AA in mental hospitals from 17 to 21 years to 21 or 24 years old. And then I was back in the mental hospital in 30s. And then I did shadow work at Mankind Project weekends. And then I did, I'm not going to go into it now. I've written a lot about it. So I want to bring these things together. And what it really is fundamentally is my experience is, as opposed to this is how to do it, or this is how I did it. It's my experience of doing this was this. That's very different. And if you haven't been in a circle like that, it's really different. I haven't seen that in business. I really haven't, because people hold back because they don't want to do anything that'll hurt their reputation, or they feel is weird. I was talking about somebody in Silicon Valley who's super woo, like Gail. And she's like, I can't talk about this out here. They all think I'm nuts. She's not, but she's afraid to talk about it. Well, Naval did. Naval Ravikant got away with it. That's what he's talking about. But he put a language on it that's understandable. For her, that's harder. It could be because she's a woman. You ever think of that? I did. Now, and he's a man. Plus, he made $100 million or whatever. So now he's one of the gang. So he can say whatever he wants. If he hadn't, they wouldn't listen to him. I don't think. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't think I am, because their belief systems around mental processing being the answer are really strong. It's the technology is going to save the world, software eat the world, all this stuff. Great, true. It is true for sure. Software eat the world. So Mark Andreessen was right. I don't know if it's a good thing though, but he was right. So what Red Pill Labs, I'm out of time, but I'm going to go quick. Red Pill Labs is what's next. Red Pill Labs is going to trigger a lot of people because we're going to talk about the creative zeitgeist of what's next. So this is the experimental lab of moving forward. Whenever you introduce anything new into the society, there's a reactive pushback. In Red Pill Labs, we're going to talk about that stuff by saying what's going on in the laboratory of our laboratories, not mine, ours. I got a laboratory, Gail's got one, Brian's got one, you may have one. If you have one, we want you to come. You're going to get a speaking opportunity, but you won't be on stage. You'll be sitting in a circle talking about your laboratory experiments. To me, this is new. I can't find it. I can't find EntreX Forum, and I can't find Red Pill Labs in business. I see it in personal development world, in the spiritual elevation world, and the how to improve yourself world, and the habit world. Like, I see it there, but I don't see it integrated with the business environment. I think it's too difficult for people to feel they can share the truth. So don't say anything if you don't feel comfortable. Just share your experience.